What's going on YouTube? This is Ribo back at the bench, and this time I am here with another Chris Reeve review. So definitely not my first, won't be my last. I have gone off the deep end into the black hole that is CRK, and am pretty much unashamedly a huge CRK fan now. So this is the small Inkosi, and this is the Tonto version. I will just jump right into the size comparison because, as I said, I've gone in deep. I also own right now the large Tonto Inkosi, as well as the small 31 Sebenza that's been on the channel many times, and the large 31 Sebenza. So two pair here. I think I made the joke to someone that I try to keep them in pairs, and I try to keep them nearby so that perhaps they'll procreate and I'll have even more little CRKs running around. That would be awesome. But anyway, this review is on the small Inkosi, and I'll just leave it up here for a second with the large just so you can take in the size. So the small Inkosi is a very interesting knife. So kind of give my CRK timeline. So I was introduced to the small 31. Actually, I was introduced to the small 21 first, then the large 21, then the small 31, and then it just kind of went crazy from there. But the Sebenza was really my first love, and I've been through the Umnumzan since then, as well as some fixed blades. The Menundi, I'm sorry. And so finally I was like, well, I need to try the Inkosi. And honestly, the Inkosi never really spoke to me because of the deep finger choils, finger grooves there. I thought it was just very un-Sebenza-like, which it is. But I just thought it was kind of weird, and I didn't love the way that it looked. And I thought there's no way that raw titanium, two big slabs of titanium with these big finger choils could be super comfortable. And so I just kind of wrote it off. And then I was like, well, I at least need to try it because I'm such a big CRK nut now. And so I tried it and I loved it, and I fell in love with this knife. And so then I was like, well, if I have the large 31, small 31, now I've got to try to find a small Tonto Inkosi. So I found this guy. So that's kind of my little timeline of CRK madness. But that's how I wound up with this small Tonto. I guess I'll flip it around so you can kind of take in the other side as well while I'm talking. I guess let's go ahead and get into things that I like about the small Tonto Inkosi. And doing reviews like this is a little bit difficult with a knife like the Sebenza or the Inkosi or the Umnumzan. Because there are, they are just staples of the collection. It's not like CRK is releasing brand new knives every year or anything. And apologies for the shake in the video. I'm bumping the bench a little bit. It's not like they release new knives, but there are so many different configurations, and honestly, a different configuration of a CRK could drastically change the way you feel about it. The Tonto is very, very different from the drop point, and so, I'm going to review the knife on the table, and I might offer some thoughts on maybe what various configurations could do, inlay versus not inlay and all that stuff. So let's get into it. So things that I like about the Inkosi here. So first of all, ergonomics. So, I fell in love with the large Inkosi here for ergonomic reasons primarily. It's super, super comfortable. That just really works in my hand. And I was a little bit worried about how that was going to translate to the Inkosi here. But shockingly, I found it's really good. Now, a knife like this is more of a utility blade to me, at least. This is a blade that I'm going to be using to open packages and to do little things, little slicing cuts. And so honestly, usually I'm using some kind of pinch grip like this. Like 90% of the time, this is how I'm holding the knife because I'm bearing down. These are great knives for making kind of, what am I trying to say? Almost using like an X-Acto, especially with that Tonto blade. So a lot of the times I'm using the knife like this, and it's actually super ergonomic. The shorter blade handle there makes that work really, really well. But honestly, if you use it like this, it's surprisingly ergonomic as well. Those finger grooves there actually work very well on the smaller knife, and I was very, very surprised by that. You've also got a little bit higher lip here, it feels like, where that blade is coming up and out. And so it just, to me, it works. It gives you, kind of a nice bear down right there. And so ergonomically, I think it's really fantastic. Other things that I really like. Well, the other thing about this knife that makes it unique to the other CRKs is the fact that it's Tonto. So it's like, one, you have the ergonomic thing here, but two, it's a Tonto. I, have not traditionally been a Tonto fan, but certainly am becoming one recently, probably in the last year or so. And this knife and the large Inkosi is a big reason for that. So I find the CRK Tonto to be really, really, really good. And when I say good, I mean really, really functional and practical. The Inkosis might be my number one, like, just hard use knife. I have used the Tonto way more than I expected to. There's tons of practical applications for that. I've used it for everything from doing some drywall work around my house and needing to scrape some things. I'm trying to remember what I think I was fixing nail heads or screw heads in the drywall and having to patch those and do a little bit of scraping work. And it's great for scraping if you have something. It's also great, as I said, if you have to mark lines or you have to do some kind of scoring cuts, which I've done kind of with a ruler and made a scoring cut. It's fantastic for that. It's got enough blade here that you can make some small slicing cuts. The large obviously works a lot better for this, but you can do a few things. And then it's just a great kind of box cutter blade. So, cutting tape and doing that kind of thing, it works really, really well. And so I've found this type of Tonto where you've got this big back bevel here just to be extremely functional, more so than I thought. Honestly, when I saw the little Inkosis, I thought those look really, really cool. Just you have this really stout knife in a small package. There's just something really cool about that. But I was really surprised to find how practical it was. So I've really enjoyed that. Honestly, the Insingo blade, which is insanely practical and really excellent, and I've had several of them and I'll probably own more. I almost prefer this. Not quite. I think the Insingo is still probably all around better, but I've been really, really surprised by how much I've liked having the Tonto. All right, other things that I like. So the other things that I like are just pretty much the things that I like in every CRK, and they're really not specific to the Inkosi. And so the things that I like, just running through them really quick, I'm not going to go through everything again, but like the things that I like in general about the CRKs and about the kind of slab titanium CRKs, it's the build quality. It's the raw titanium. I've realized that at this point, at least, I'm a PJ guy. I like the plain Jane versions more than the inlay. That being said, I'm looking for a 31 black micarta inlay, large 31, if you happen to know anyone. But in general, I love the PJ. I like the look of them. The quality is just top-notch, consistency in opening and closing. And for me, I absolutely love the ceramic detent ball lock. It is, I've realized, I've had several 21s and I've just realized I love the ceramic detent ball. It's, that's where I want to be. I find it just very, very easy to open and close. I like the action. I don't like having that second click. I think it's super cool. Kind of hard to see on the smaller knife here, but I just think it's really cool, and I love it. So it gives a little bit extra to the action, which is really, really cool. So that's kind of in general things that I like about the titanium CRKs. But let's go ahead and get into some things that I dislike about the small Tonto Inkosi. With the small Inkosi, and this is a little bit different than like the small Sabenza, which is a little bit bigger. The small Inkosi is really, really small. I mean, you can see that. Now I guess it's not like drastically different from the Sabenza, at least in the handle size, but it certainly feels drastically different. And I think there's one primary reason for that. And if you look at, I mean, the same is true on the large versions of these, but if you look at the access to the lock bar, you will see that there is a lot of access here on the Sabenza, and it is really, really thin on the Inkosi, and you can see that that's true on the large as well for both of the versions. But I think on the large version, it's not quite as big a deal. It's definitely noticeable if you do them side by side, but it's not quite as noticeable. On the small versions, it's super noticeable. So I don't really have a problem at all disengaging the small Sabenza. If anything, I sometimes have a problem opening it. But I do tend to have some issues disengaging the Inkosi, and it's really because I just can't get my finger in there to get good grip on that lock bar. And so that's an issue in itself, right? Secondly, you do, or I do, have an issue opening the knife sometimes because that thumb stud, which is already somewhat uncomfortable, is just very, very close to that first finger choil right there. And so you just don't have much room in there. You can't, it's kind of even hard to just do it by the fingernail. And so I sometimes struggle, particularly if I'm actually working or whatever, my hands are sweating and whatnot. It can be really difficult to get a thumb in there to open up the knife. And it's, you know, it's not impossible. It's not like you can't get it, but it's just enough to where it's just frustrating. Not every time, but 50% of the time that you go to open the knife, it's just kind of frustrating. And so that's one issue with the Inkosi, particularly with the small Inkosi. I don't have that issue as much on the large, you know, a little bit, but it's not quite as noticeable. My larger issue with the Inkosi line in general is the fact that, you know, this is, I think Inkosi is the chief. It's supposed to be kind of the most advanced CRK over the Sabenza. And I certainly see that there. I'm not going to go through this and I'm not going to strip it down. But the frustrating thing to me about the Inkosi is that they have added complexity to the knife and to the takedown process and to kind of the inner workings. There are things like, and I'll bring a Sabenza out here, but you don't have screws in each of these. You've got a screw head on one side and then just this insert here, whereas here you've got screws that go both into that backspacer there, or that stop pin. And then you've got two screws here on the pivot. And so you've got to take two tools, lock them, and use them to open each other, as well as some other things and how like the washer is done and stuff. But the thing that really drives me nuts is the pivot. So in the Inkosi box, CRK includes some Loctite for you. It's a purple Loctite. And I think the directions that they give are that you should use that on the pivot on the Inkosi, that they recommend that, which is, you know, when I saw that, I don't know, I'm not really a Loctite guy. I have some, I use it occasionally. I don't love to have to do it. So that was a little bit disappointing, but then I realized, like, after carrying it and using the knife, you really do have to use Loctite because it will open up. Because you have those two screws there. What I've noticed particularly on my large is that, I don't know if you can tell this, but it's loose right there. Now I actually did put a little bit of Loctite on this one, and I have just noticed that over time, as I'm using the knife, if I'm not taking it down and putting it back together regularly, it does tend to loosen up. That's incredibly frustrating to me on two levels. Number one, because, you know, if you're traveling or whatever, you don't have your tool, that's super frustrating. But number two, the fact that you have to have two tools to really be able to take down or to tighten up the knife. It just makes it to where, you know, I love the knife, but I find myself not really wanting to carry it anywhere because I don't know if it's going to loosen up and I'm going to be up a creek. Now, I'm never going to be up a creek because I've usually got several other knives nearby, but you know what I mean. So that's kind of my main issue with the Inkosi, and I guess particularly the small Inkosi. All right, so final conclusions on this. Final conclusions is tough. So for the Inkosi line in general, I'm really split between cut or carry. I love it in a lot of ways. The pivot and the Loctite thing is super frustrating to me, and I just can't decide how frustrating it is. Thankfully, I've got a little bit more time to decide that for my larger view, because this is going to be a cut for me for the other reason, which is just I like the size. I think it's very useful, but it's just a hair too small for me. Or maybe it's just the opening and closing is just a little bit too difficult for me given the size. It's a little bit hard to open that up and just not necessarily enjoyable. And it's a little bit too hard to disengage. I think if I had to make a choice, the disengage is probably the one that drives me nuts, but they're about even. And while it's not awful, it is enough that it's just kind of an annoyance. So I think for that reason, the small Inkosi itself is going to be a cut for me. The Inkosi platform in general, I'm still kind of on the fence about. So that's kind of it for me. I'm gonna call this one a cut, even though it pains me greatly because I do love my dear CRK quite a bit. All right, so that's it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.